Okay, so we're going to talk now about how we send things off to PCBWay to get them manufactured. So, Doc Walton, take one.
Okay, so we've read our PCB, everything's looking good. We now need to convert that PCB into a standard set of files that can be recognised by all the different PCB manufacturers that are out there. Every single PCB design software comes with the ability to export as Gerber or Gerber files, however you want to say it.
Gerber.
I like
Gerber.
Some people like to say Gerber. And it's a set of standard files that enable their CNC machines and everything to match up their production processes with what your PCB requires. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that everything's there and ready to go for our PCB. So final check, because what's going to happen is when you send your PCB to the company, they have got no idea what you built and they're not interested. All they need to know is can they manufacture that PCB, so they're not going to check your file. Yeah? If they do, if they come back to you and say, there's been a few exceptions to your PCB, we found a few short circuits and everything, you're very lucky. Because they don't have to. You might have your text mirrored the wrong way, or you might have the top and the bottom layers around. They will manufacture it, take your money, deliver you a PCB that will never work. So you've got to make sure that you do those sanity checks. So what I've got here is a very simple PCB. It's got 4 or 5 components on, some little pins. Now this is just the PCB part, not the actual building of the board. Once they've designed the PCB for you, or once you've designed the PCB and they've manufactured the PCB, it's just a bare board like you've got in your kit. So then you need to go through the manufacture process and then a placement process. So we'll cover the placement process a little bit later. Right now we're just going to concentrate on manufacturing this PCB. So what we're going to do is we're going to export this. So to do that, we can come along to the export option in multi-sim. Here we press export, and as you can see here, we have some schemes that will allow us to quickly select some defaults for our export parameters. In this case, we don't need to mess with anything really, and actually, from previous experience with this, it's best that you don't mess with anything, okay? Because you don't have enough time to repeat the process if you need to make a correction. So what this is basically asking me is what layers, you remember the layers and how to create the PCBs, what layers we want to export and send to the PCB manufacturer. Now nowadays, a fast card will just do everything for you. So before you would have a certain place that would do the etching and then somebody else would do printing, or somebody else might do the drilling. But now normally the whole place would do a one-stop solution for your entire PCB needs. So what we've got to make sure is that we have included our copper layers. We've included the board outline. That's very important. Remember when I said that it must be a complete outline, because that is what the fabrication company will price your board against, because that's its physical shape and size, and that ultimately is what their costs are. Yeah? So we make sure the board outline is on there. We've got our silk screen top and bottom because we want them to print those texts on there. And we've got our solder mask because we want that green chemical board on top of the PCB to stop the solder giving them short circuits. So everything looks very nice there. Don't need to mess about with anything. Just check it out, make sure that these important layers are there. We hit export. Away she goes. Now down here you will see it's completed and it's also done your drill files. Again, I'll explain that quickly. When your board goes through the manufacturing process, it will go through various stages. Typically there's some kind of ultraviolet light or printing on the board that marks where all the traps are. Then it will go to some etching process where the copper will be dissolved away from areas that aren't a trap. And then it will be coated with a solder mask. And then somebody will put it in a CNC drilling machine and all the little holes will be drilled for you. So there are separate processes and each one has got one of these separate files. Now, this is going to tell you here that if we click on one of these files, we'll open, this is where it's exported all my files. So each one of these is a layer. Now, I need to send them all So what I do is I'll select them all, right, and I'll just send them to a compressed folder, yeah, and I'll call this compressed folder PCBWay, just for my own sanity, yeah. So all of these files now, and it's very important they're all there, because if you missed off some important process and you've told the fab plant that you're going to do this, this and this, they're going to send you an exception report back saying you haven't delivered the right files, we can't process it. Yeah? So we've got all of our layers in this zip file. We're now going to go to a fab plant choosing